How's everybody doing tonight? Got something a little different today. I got a book. Why is this on camera? I don't know. I messed something up. I think it's this camera. Camera 2 is like a little off. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a little off tonight. Anyway, I had this idea at like midday, I'm going to call it today, but midday for a Saturday, I think maybe like 3 p.m. I had this idea that I was going to talk about this Forrest Gump book tonight. And then like an hour or two ago, I was checking Twitter, and in my feed, I don't know who retweeted it, but there was like something from Gary Sinise, who played Lieutenant Dan in the movie version of Forrest Gump, and he was saying that it's the 30th anniversary of the theatrical release of the movie Forrest Gump. Like, apparently today's the anniversary, so I don't know if I somehow knew that. I don't, maybe I don't know, who knows, maybe I did. I know I saw it in the drive-in theater, so I knew it was a summer movie. Excuse me, because I only went to drive-ins in the summer. Anyway, normally on this show we're putting puzzles together, and I will put more puzzles together, but I just felt like talking. Oh, you got a preview there of the 3 that I'm gonna mention today. So I wanted to give this sort of long intro before I get to Forrest Gump, if you'll bear with me as to why I'm even talking about this. So I've got Forrest Gump here, and I read this, and I've got Godfather, and I'm like up to, I guess, book 5 I'm about to start. It says there book 5, so I didn't start that yet, but I've got the book. It's like the 50th anniversary edition, and this one is also 50th anniversary. I got this recently, whenever Father's Day was, like 2 weeks ago. My wife got it. I had it in my shopping cart, but she saw that I had read Forrest Gump, and then I was enjoying reading The Godfather, and she asked if I had anything queued up next, and I said, yeah, I have Jaws in my shopping cart, so she bought it for me, so that was nice. Thank you. And so these 2 books came out before I was born. I don't know when this one came out. I guess we'll look in a second, but basically the movie came out 30 years ago, so if the movie came out 30 years ago, the book must have come out, sometime before that. Let's open it up and see. But these 2 books my parents had, and this cover is, I think it's probably redrawn in some sense. Maybe it's not. I think it's like a new drawing, but I think this was pretty much always the cover. Like, when this was like, the books that my parents didn't read were in the basement, and like 4 of the 5 kids, including me, our rooms were in the basement. Your choice was either like, you live like the 3 it was only 3 bedrooms upstairs. 1 goes to the parents, so it was like 3 boys in 1 room, 2 girls in the other, or you can go to the basement and we'll put up some walls for you and you'll have a room. So that's what we all picked, but I guess the youngest didn't need to, because he basically just kept the room. But anyway, this was there, and my dad used to talk about this a lot. I remember him talking about this book. I guess, I don't know if he read it or if he just heard people talk about it, but he was always talking about Jaws and comparing it to the movie. And this, so the cover was like pretty much exactly like that. And The Godfather, I would say this cover was pretty true to the real cover too. I remember it had this hand and this, like marionette style theme, and it said Godfather, and it said Mario Puzo. I don't think it had this gold yet. I think it didn't mention Francis Ford Coppola. But this was in the basement too. I could have read it at any point growing up, but I didn't. I could have read this. So I still haven't read Jaws. Maybe 2 weeks from now I'll have read it. And this came out before I was born. This came out before I was born. And I guess I'm more than halfway through it, but technically I haven't read this yet. Although I'm not sure what's left. I feel like everything I read was in the movie, but I guess there's something left in these remaining pages. And Forrest Gump, I did read. This was the first one. And I'm not even sure what made me read it. I guess the same force that made me want to cover it today made me read it. It's like maybe something was telling me that the 30th anniversary is coming up, or I don't know what inspired me. I know that it's a type of movie that even people who didn't see it know about it, like my kids. That this came out at least a decade before they were born, the movie, but they know about it and they've seen it and they reference it. So it's a very famous movie, this Forrest Gump. So anyway, this Forrest Gump book is completely different from the movie. He does play football at Alabama. He does go to Vietnam. And he does say he has to pee, but they're really like, I'm going to tell you in a minute, hopefully without spoilers. But they're really very different books. Well, before I get into this book, I want to talk about what's been going on with this stream lately. So I will get back to doing puzzles, though I'm not doing one tonight. But I'm gonna talk about a book tonight, but I will do more puzzles in the future. And it's not like I'm burnt out. It's not like I'm tired, but I just kind of, some people, they pick a hobby and they do it for like the rest of their life. They're just like, I like to do, fencing, like with the swords and the jabbing people. And then they'll just like study fencing for the rest of their life. Or someone else is like, I'm into like cinematography. And they'll pick like being a camera person. And like, they'll just study cameras for the rest of their life. They just spend like 90 straight years studying cameras. And I recognize and appreciate, and the world is happy that we have people who do that, but that's not what I do. I sort of go with the flow, which is kind of what Forrest Gump did too. So maybe that's why I feel like talking about this. But if you ask why I haven't been streaming lately, it's because I've been reading lately. So I don't keep my hobbies. I don't stick to one hobby for my entire lifetime. I just kind of do whatever I feel like doing. And lately I felt like reading. So that's why I haven't been streaming. I've just been using my free time to do reading. And it actually started not because of reading. It started because I have to finish Venduti. So when you make comics, I make the comic Venduti. Previously I did Electromagnet, 700 Nights, Decathlon Trial, these different books. And even if you look at those books, like Electromagnet is like futuristic sci-fi blended with like ancient archaeology. Decathlon Trial is sports blended with family. 700 Nights is it's historical. It's like actual history. Like a college professor could assign that in a class potentially. That would be good if they did, by the way. Maybe I'd sell a few copies. But anyway, and I've done a few other books. And the point is that, why was I bringing that point up? Oh, the point is that even those books, they're like completely different. It's not like, Isaac Asimov. I guess he had a couple of branches. He did physics books and he did sci-fi, but I don't know. Did Douglas Adams do anything besides sci-fi? I think there's like some authors who are like, yeah, I do like sports books, and they do 15 sports books. Or there's some guys who are like, I do Yankee books, and they did like 20 books about the New York Yankees. Yeah, I don't do that. So I do basically whatever I do, which is the same as Forrest, although in the book he usually blames everything that he does on somebody else. And in the movie, it's all like it just kind of happened. But I'll tell you, when you look back, it does feel like it just kind of happened. Like Electromagnet was my first graphic novel. And it was 290 pages, sci-fi graphic novel, like exactly what you're told not to do on your first graphic novel. And I can't even tell you why or how I did that. I mean, I probably could tell you how if I take some time to think about it, but the why would be very difficult for me to answer, which is the same answer that Forrest Gump gives, you know, in the pretty much both the movie and the book. That's the one thing they have in common, is that he just does a lot of different stuff. So what happened is, I was doing my stream. I did like 600 whatever days consecutively without missing one. And then we had this 2-day vacation schedule. It was like first vacation I took in like a decade. And it was only 2 days long. We went up to Lake Placid to see the eclipse. So I took those 2 days off. And then something happened with my work. It got like super busy. And then, but I still kept doing the stream. I would like keep getting it done. And then, but I did miss the 2 days for the eclipse. And then one day I woke up, and I think I described it on a previous stream as like medical episode. So this medical episode like took me out of the streaming game for 3 days. But then since then, there was a lot of track meets on. There was like the conference championships from all the different college conferences. And then there was the regional qualifiers for the NCAA. And then there was the NCAA. And then there was the Olympic trials. And then in like 3 weeks from now, there's going to be the Olympics. So that was another hobby. I was watching a lot of track and field. And like, I enjoyed it. I mean, I'm allowed to watch track and field. So anyway, I never made a commitment that I was going to do an everyday stream, but I'm going to try to get back to that. But they're not always going to be building. Sometimes they're going to be books. So hopefully I get back. And sometimes there'll be other things besides books and building and puzzles. And I don't know what it's going to be. I think I've done readings, a few readings. I think I have some stuff I didn't release yet where I shouldn't mention the stuff I haven't released yet, but you'll see it. So anyway, Forrest Gump. Let's just take a look at the jacket here. New York Times bestseller. Okay, that doesn't really mean anything. In fact, I think that's horrible. I think it's horrible that you get more sales because you already get a lot of sales. I kind of feel like all books should get a shot. Like the people who read books, I almost feel like they should be randomly sent books just so that they, read them. Like, for example, I get randomly sent stuff to review on the areas that I know. So like gym equipment is one of those areas. And I almost feel like the book should be randomly sent to people who read them because like this book already sold 1 million copies. Like, I mean, it's good. You'll like it if you get it, but like, why should they get more sales when they already sold 1 million? I feel like someone whose book hasn't been read yet should get a chance. But anyway, that's not how it works. It's got some blurb here. Part candid, part candide. I don't know. Is that another book? I never heard of it. Part Huck Finn. I don't get how that's part Huck Finn. Although it may be this one thing. Huck Finn you can't like read nowadays because it has like language problem. Like there's cursing and like words that you can't say. And that's what's in Forrest Gump book as well. And I'm not talking about minor characters. I'm talking about Forrest Gump is saying the words that you cannot say. By the way, Godfather also says the words that you can't say, but it says them about like Italians, and I am Italian, and it doesn't offend me. But Forrest Gump is saying them about other groups, and I'm not part of those other groups. Well, genetically I might be slightly, but I'm not like identify myself as part of those groups, and I feel like the language he uses, it's like almost like I can't, I mean, I know that it's just a character and they're just words, but in this day and age, you just don't use those words at all. I feel like those words shouldn't exist. But the same way I'm not offended by the Italian, anti-Italian slurs, I can understand why the people in those groups aren't offended by their slurs, at least when they say them to each other, but they are when someone else says them. I mean, I get it. I kind of wish those things weren't in the book, but they are. The novel that inspired the Academy Award-winning film, yeah, these are totally different. Totally different. I'll get into it in a second, but the book and the movie, they're two different things. I don't know which one's better. They're both good, but they're totally different. As much fun as a box of chocolates, but far less fattening. There is a chocolate box in the book. It doesn't serve the same role. As you can see here, like, even though just right from the description, 6'6", 242 pounds, possessed a scant IQ of 70. That's kind of like an interesting description there. First of all, the 6'6", 242. Obviously, that's nothing like the size of Tom Hanks in the movie. The IQ of 70 does match Tom Hanks in the movie. I don't know if this was written before or after the movie came out or rewritten, because actually that's one of the big differences is in the book. I don't see Forrest as being stupid. He does, like, just to give you some examples, hopefully not spoiling it, he does advanced physics. He plays championship level chess and ping pong. He does a lot of things in the book that you wouldn't expect someone with an IQ of 70 to do. And it's more like, what is it? They call him a savant in the book. Maybe they don't actually say that, but they sort of imply that he's a savant. But I think it's like not exactly it. What I think it is he's smart, and but he doesn't sign up for other people's BS. And that's why people label him stupid. For example, when he takes a Rorschach test, they show him those ink blots, and he like describes every one. They show him those ink blots, the Rorschach test, and he describes every one of them as an ink blot. So like he's not playing along. I'm trying to find what year the copyright on this book. Okay, 1986. So that's a 38-year-old book, I think. If that's what I'm looking at here, if I'm reading this right. So, it's a 38-year-old book here, Forrest Gump. So, it's 228 pages. It actually spans, like, Forrest, like, pretty much his whole life. You know, kind of like the movie does. And you might think, but he has so many adventures, how can they be described in 228 pages? You know, it's amazing. It's actually, I like this style. Like, you know, I don't know what it's kind of like, this book's 38 years old, but I think this is kind of the way people write nowadays. Like, back then, you had to pretend like, oh, Forrest Gump is a narrator, and he's only talking that way because he's an idiot. But really, this is like a good way to describe things. He'll say, like, you know, they were launching the rocket, you know, so there were people doing countdowns and smoke going off and red lights flashing and all that shit. Like that, like that's like a paraphrase quote of the way Forrest Gump talks in the book. So he'll like describe in a sentence. He'll just like name a bunch of things that are like, you know what a rocket ship launching's like, you know, countdowns and lights and shit. And that's how he'll do it. And it's similar to my favorite comic book artist, Frank Miller, who will sometimes if it's a dramatic scene, it'll be drawn out for pages, but other times something will just be, here's a bunch of like icons, like, you know, just like 9 images on a page, and it's like, this one's a wrench, and this one's a screw, and this one's a tire, and okay, you get the idea. The guy's like changing the tire or whatever it is. So he'll just like not describe things, you know, because sometimes when you're growing up, you're told like this is great poetry or this is a great book, and you read it and they're like describing something forever and they're like just talking about it and using all these stupid words and, like to describe something, and they're like really dragging it out. So this book doesn't do that. And I think nowadays most people don't do that, whether it's comic book, movies, or novels. People just get to the point a lot quicker, describe things more succinctly. This book did that back then, but it is different from the movie. I don't think it's a spoiler. I'm going to give one example, one specific example, and then I'll describe the others less specifically. So, like, what happens to Jenny in the movie? You remember what happens to Jenny in the movie. Maybe you don't know exactly what happens, but I'll just tell you in the book, Jenny's perfectly fine at the end. She's not... She dies in the movie. She doesn't die in the book. So that's not a spoiler, I don't think. I'm saying she doesn't die. But without spoiling, Forrest, the main character of the book, his ending is different in the book. Lieutenant Dan's ending is different in the book. Bubba's ending is the same in the book and the movie, but his backstory is different. Mama is very different in the book. In the movie, it's like Forrest is like something's wrong with him, and the mother's like making sure that he gets through life even though there's something wrong with him. In the book, it's debatable whether there's even anything wrong with Forrest. It seems more like the mom keeps telling him he's stupid because he doesn't fall for the stuff that she believes and that a lot of other people believe, and he just thinks, well, I don't understand how 2 + 2 = 5. I guess that's why I'm an idiot. Whatever Forrest will say. I didn't do the accent good, but the point is, he doesn't fall for BS. And that's why he labels himself stupid, and his mom labels him stupid, and a lot of people label him stupid, but then they put him in an advanced physics class, and he gets 100, and they teach him chess, and he becomes a champion. And this bench is not in the book. He never sits in the bench in the book. And I don't know who's sitting here. Is this supposed to be his son sitting on this bench? Because the feet aren't touching the ground. And it's definitely not the size of, 6'6", 242. So Forrest is different. There's more characters in the book. There's more adventures in the book. It's only 228 pages. More characters, more adventures. It's actually kind of crazy, the additional adventures in Forrest Gump. I was almost thinking to do like a super cut of using all Tom Hanks movies and pretending that it's all Forrest Gump, because the adventures that are in the book that were cut out of the movie, they almost seem like they're from Hanks's other movies, like from Apollo 13 or from Castaway, or from that movie where he's like returning carts in the airport terminal. It's crazy. I think someone should do that. Maybe I'll do that. A super cut of like all Tom Hanks movies into Forrest Gump. I think it could be done. So the book is very different from the movie. They're different. Neither one is better than the other. Neither one is essential. I'm not saying that if you liked the movie you'll like or dislike the book. I'm just saying the book is I can't say it's good because it's got the foul language, but you'll probably enjoy it. Like, it's different. It's I almost felt like it was a whitewash. Like the movie was a whitewash because the real point of Forrest is that the point that I got is that he's just not falling for BS. He's like real. And that real, it's like making him look stupid. Here's a perfect example. I think, maybe this video will get deleted by YouTube if I use this as an example, but if you've been following what's going on lately with the COVID vax, it's like when it first came out, if you were like questioned it or weren't sure if you wanted to take it, you were told like you can look online. There's like, you know, TV hosts, news hosts, comedy hosts, like people doing like the guy from Parks and Rec, Tom, like does a stand-up comedy and he like makes fun of people who didn't get the vax. I mean, everyone was like really coming down on people who didn't get the vax and acting like they were morons. And now it's like 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later, whatever it is. And now people are like, oh, you guys knew something. Why didn't you tell us? And it's like, what? That's what Forrest Gump is kind of like. In the book, he's not stupid. In fact, he might be very smart. But because everyone else goes with the stupid idea, he looks stupid. It's almost like Family Feud. You know that game Family Feud, where like the answer you get the most points by putting the most common answer. You get the most points by putting the most common answer. Do you think that Albert Einstein and Robert Oppenheimer and Isaac Newton and Galileo Galilei, or, you know, Leonardo da Vinci, do you think they're putting the most common answer? Do you think they're answering the questions with like what everybody would say? Or do you think they're giving a better answer that might take, you know, 50, 100 years of people digesting their books to really understand them? There's still people going through Tesla's notebooks. There's still people going through Da Vinci's notebooks. There's still people going through Alan Turing's notes. There's the first computer was built using Charlie Babbage's design, like, but the components and the technology and the hardware didn't exist till much after he did the design. The hardware finally exists. Someone put the design together and it worked. So it's like, I don't know, the example teachers give is like people laughing at Columbus when he said he was going to like sail to India or whatever, which I'm not even sure. Actually, that might not even be a good example. That might be a bad example. But the point is, Forrest Gump is clearly smart. I mean, right? If he's doing advanced physics and if he's winning chess tournaments and ping pong tournaments, he can't be stupid. But they're putting him in the stupid class and everyone telling him he's stupid because when people say stuff like the one they do in the book, which really, this is definitely whitewashed in the movie, is like every time he's asked to describe Vietnam in the book, he says like, it's a bunch of shit. Like, there's no point. We shouldn't be there. It's just a bunch of shit. I don't know why we're there. So, like, in the movie, the one time someone asks him about Vietnam, they, like, cut his mic and nobody hears what he says. But in the book, he says, like, several times, it's a bunch of shit. Like, 10 times, probably, a dozen times. So that part's definitely whitewashed. So, yeah, Forrest's not stupid. He's pretty smart. And I'm not sure that if a smart person is also unyielding, unwavering, it's a very interesting combination that Forrest Gump has. He's unwavering in his own mind, but he's totally wavering in his actions. He'll let people call him stupid. He'll go on these like missions that they give him, and these, you know, he even says in the book, like, I get in trouble by saying yes. Like, someone says, you should do, you know, ping pong, or you should do wrestling. I think it's mentioned in the back here about the wrestling. Yeah, wrestler. So, like, there's, like, whole adventures in here. You know, they mentioned the ping pong player, the wrestler, Vietnam, football. So, some of this overlaps with the movie, but some of it doesn't. I mean, the wrestling and the chess weren't in the movie, whereas the running is in the movie, and that's not in the book. So I'm not sure if it's like if you love the movie, you'll love the book. But if you like, I think you'll like the book. If you liked what you heard, in this podcast, whatever I'm doing here, you'll probably like the book too. If you're the type of guy who thinks like you figured it out with your own brain and it makes sense, not that you came up with some like stupid biased opinion that makes you feel good, but if you really went step by step and you figured something out and you're sure it makes sense, but everyone on the TV is saying the opposite, you'll probably like the Forrest Gump book. And that's what's missing from the movie. Again, the movie is like a totally different thing. There's like Elvis and JFK, and like the movie's a totally different thing, and it's good in its own way. But this idea that Forrest is this person who doesn't buy the propaganda and sees through to the truth, that's totally like missing from the movie and is prominent in the book. So I don't know. I think it's a cool book. The ending is really weird. He has a son, but he doesn't see him. Like, he only saw the son once in the book. There's definitely some weird stuff. There's some upsetting things. It's fun though. It's fun, and there's the foul language. It's kind of like a book that if they hadn't made the movie, I'm not sure if anyone who would have read it. But at the same time, they did make the movie, so someone must have read it. Was it a New York Times bestseller before they made the movie? When did they say it came out? They made the movie in 94. It came out in 94. And when did this book come out? Because it takes a while to make a movie. This came out in 86. So you've got to like fund the movie, write the movie. You've got to record, photograph the movie, edit the movie. And it came out the movie came out only 8 years after the book. I mean, to me, that's like insane. I mean, is that normal? The movies usually come out that quick? I feel like they should come out like 30 years later. Let's see let's see this one. The Godfather. When did that book come out? Because I think the movie came out in 72. So when did the book come out? Well, this thing says 50th anniversary. 1969? Is that when it came out? So this movie came out only 3 years after the book, if that's when it was first published. So 2019? So 2019 was the 50th anniversary? Wow, how is that possible? How does the movie come out 3 years after the book? I mean, how they even have time to film it? I mean, the technology wasn't that advanced back then. Like, how could they possibly do like a movie that quickly? All right, when was this one? Copyright 1974. Wow. Okay. I don't know what's going on here. I'm confused now. So these books, like, the company releases the book and they just like immediately make it a movie? That's insane. I don't know if I'm losing faith in the movie business by hearing this. Like, why am I still waiting for a Halo movie? Like, the Halo game came out like 23 years ago, and we don't have like a decent Halo movie yet. What's that all about? Do you think that the movie studio is making the book? Do you think that they already know that they're making the movie and then someone just puts the book out? Because I know that was the case with, they used to call it ID4, but it was Independence Day. That famous movie Independence Day. There's been several sequels at this point. And actually, I saw a recent sequel of it. It was pretty good. It had Data in it, and it had the president from the first one. It didn't have Will Smith, but it had pretty much everyone else. It was a pretty good sequel. I forget what it was called, but they were like going through the desert. It had a vibe very similar to the first movie. The guy from Taxi was in it. The father. Anyway, when that movie came out, I read a book first, but I think the book was created like in conjunction with the movie, like as marketing for the movie, but somehow it was different. Like in the book for Independence Day, that Randy Quaid character, he like strapped a bomb to a crop duster and like flew it. And I know that that's like impossible, but that's the way it was in the book. And he like kamikazed it, I think. So he probably didn't live through the, did he live through the, I don't think he lived through the movie either. Well, he definitely didn't make it through the book. So in that case of Independence Day, the book was made as marketing for the movie. Now, we're to believe with Jaws and Godfather that it was, that they were independent, but dang, they came out quick. This one, now the 8 years for Forrest Gump, the fact that it's 8 years and the fact that it's so different, like Godfather is not really different from what I'm reading so far. It's kind of like a little bit different. You know, there's some parts they just seem like they were just cut for time, and there were other parts that were like just presented a little bit differently. But I mean, the basic story is the same. I haven't read Jaws yet. Forrest Gump, between the book and the movie, honestly, it feels like someone read the book, described it to someone else, that someone else like made wrote a screenplay, and then someone who read the book read the screenplay and were like, dude, this is like absolutely nothing like the book. And the guy's like, oh, I can fix that. So then he read the book, took a bunch of quotes from the book, and had those same characters say them in the movie, even if they were in like totally different situations. But they would say the same line, and they're like, there, I fixed it. Now it matches the book. But really, the book and the movie are like two totally different things. There's nothing alike about them. Anyway, I'll probably do an edit version of this video at some point where I'll do some scans from the book and I'll do some clips from the movie, and I'll kind of compress things together so that it's not so, so it is now where I'm just like rambling. I'll make it like tighter. I'll make a more edited video. But anyway, and at some point I'll talk about these other two books as well. I don't know at what point. At some point. But for tonight, I'm just going to say goodnight. I'm John Rapp. This is Just Rest Your Eyes. Good night, and see you tomorrow.